I spent 10 years as a salesman, and I can recognize a sales pitch when I see one. And Proverbs is about 1/3 of it a big sales pitch on wisdom.
Oh, get wisdom.
Get wisdom.
That's good.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I got a deal for you. Wisdom.
Yeah.
It's free. You just got to seek for it and ask for it. And once you got it,
Can't stop.
it'll cover all kinds of valuable,
Save you from
important
pain.
topics. Candace, you mind popping that picture?
Off?
Yeah, off.
Not yet.
Okay. Who can quote for me James 1:5
Without looking.
without looking?
No.
Darren can.
James 1:5.
Yep.
For a man who doubts.
Well, that's 1:6.
Oh, really?
If any man lacks.
If any man lacks wisdom, God will give without reproach. All you got to do is ask.
That's exactly what it says.
And that's what Darren
Exactly
says.
what it says. That is. James 1:5. So James was the brother of Jesus. He didn't obviously believe that Jesus was the Christ till after. But then he became a leader in the church, and James in the New Testament is basically the Proverbs of the New Testament. He loved the Proverbs. So he starts off his letter saying, man, you guys need some wisdom, go ask for it. So there's this promise. If you lack wisdom, ask. If you lack wisdom, ask. So, when do we lack wisdom?
The moment I open my eyes.
Okay, so I kind of think of it personally. I've treated that 1:5 as standing. It's kind of the standing prayer. One of the prayers a guy could pray for himself over and 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 over again. In the blue Bibles, where's Proverbs 1? What page number is that?
304.
304. Okay. So. Actually, it was a few months ago. I just started praying this over the church, just wisdom and discernment, and it kind of built up for me to say, man, here we are at the cusp of 2020. We're transitioning 2019 to 2020, and we've got some changes coming as a church. When I get a job going here, and I get PR, and start doing stuff differently as a church. I want to make some other changes too. I'm going to kind of do some leading up for us next week on how to grow in 2020 and things like that. But as a group, man, God wants to lead all of us together. So what better prayer can we pray in the last Sunday of 2019 than God give us wisdom? God give us wisdom. So when it says if any man lacks wisdom, it's not really an if. Everyone lacks wisdom. So let's just get in that humble position and start asking God for wisdom, insight, discernment, leadership. What are you doing, God? So let's go to Proverbs chapter 1, page 304. And just so that you can kind of learn a little bit about the way the Proverbs works, chapters 1 to 9 is the sales pitch. So he takes pretty much fully 9 chapters where he doesn't even really give wisdom tips. He's basically spending most of it saying, get wisdom, get wisdom, get wisdom, get wisdom, get wisdom, get wisdom. And then finally in chapter 10, he starts actually giving, some wise advice. Not that he doesn't give wise advice before the chapter 10, but his whole goal. So 1 to 9 is like an intro. And there's only 31 chapters. So by verse count, it's about 25% of Proverbs is just saying, man, I got a suggestion for you. Get wisdom. Okay, but he's going to teach us how we get it, and he's going to give us some keys that we need to understand. So we're going to actually just kind of let the Proverbs speak this morning. So we're going to do a bit more reading. It's actually not that much. I read it all last night in about 10 minutes. Just to kind of read it over and refine it. So let's go to 1, and I just want you guys to take turns reading a little bit. So who's going to get 1:1 to 7? Okay, Sandra takes 1:1 to 7. Somebody get ready for 2:1. And we're actually going to read all of, so read 2:1 to 15.
Okay, I'll do that.
Okay? And then who's going to get 3:13 to the end? Sherry's got 3:13. Okay, well, so we'll just pause at that and get these ones read. So start with 1:1.
Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, son of Israel, to know wisdom and instruction, to understand words of insight, to receive instruction in wise dealing, in righteousness, justice, and equity, to give prudence to the simple, knowledge and discretion to the youth. Let the wise hear and increase in learning, and the one who understands obtain guidance, to understand a proverb and a saying, the words of the wise and their riddles. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction.
Okay, so what we're going to do when we read a section, I just want you to kind of look it over and real quick get the point. And I'm going to kind of help us so that we move along. But what's the point of this short little introduction?
Wisdom and instruction.
Yeah, it's pretty basic, kind of a little repetitious. He's telling us he's going to write a book about wisdom. Okay, what does 1:7 tell us?
The beginning of it is to fear God.
Right. If we don't have the fear of the Lord, there will be no beginning of knowledge. And then look at 1:4. Here's a question. Who needs knowledge and discretion?
The simple-minded.
Simple and
Yeah.
so here's a question. Do we start out our life as wise people?
It appears not.
Okay, so do we become wise simply by age?
Not necessarily. And
So-
experience perhaps.
So that would be huge, right? If I don't start off with the fear of the Lord, I'll never begin on the path of knowledge and wisdom that Solomon's talking about.
Yeah.
So I don't start out a wise person. So in Proverbs, let's just guess, what do we start out as then? Those of you who know. The opposite of a wise person in the Proverbs is
Moron.
a fool. You call him a moron, call him an idiot, call a lot of things, but he uses the word fool. So we start out fools, we start out young people who are foolish, and we're not going to grow in what Proverbs calls wisdom unless we get the fear of the Lord, because that is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. And we're going to see again when we get to reading a little chapter 9 passage. He says the same thing there too. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Knowledge of the Holy One is insight. We'll get there. Okay, so 2. Who had 2? 1, 2, what did I say?
15.
15.
My son, if you receive my words and treasure up my commandments with making your ear attentive to wisdom and inclining your heart to understanding, yes, if you call out for insight and raise your voice for understanding, if you seek it like silver and search for it as for hidden treasures, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. For the Lord gives wisdom, from his mouth come knowledge and understanding. He stores up sound wisdom for the upright. He is a shield to those who walk in integrity, guarding the paths of justice and watching over the way of his saints. Then you will understand the righteousness and justice and equity, every good path. For wisdom will come into your heart, and knowledge will be pleasant to your soul. Discretion will watch over you, and understanding will guard you, delivering you from the way of fools, from men of perverted speech, who forsake the paths of uprightness, to walk in the ways of darkness, who rejoice in doing evil and delight in the perverseness of evil. Men whose paths are crooked, and who are devious in their ways.
Okay, so look over this section. What do you think is the point?
Avoid bad company.
Okay, that would be a big part of the point. That was the little tail there. There's other ones though.
It's seeking.
Okay, it starts off with seeking. Yeah, that's definitely the big one, right? And then what else is the point in verse 6? That seems like an important one.
The Lord is the one who gives wisdom.
Yeah. What do you think verse 7 does? He stores up sound wisdom for the upright. He's a shield to those who walk in integrity.
There seems to be a link between uprightness and integrity and God's giving of wisdom.
Isn't that interesting? There's a link between choosing to walk in righteousness and God imparting his wisdom. So that's one of the big points in Proverbs, is it's really promoting righteous living. And part of righteous living is walking wise, and part of wisdom is walking righteous. So it's a little bit of a cycle. But again, verse 6, the Lord gives wisdom. From his mouth come knowledge and understanding. Can we just say the basic point is we could go get every doctorate available on the earth, but the kind of wisdom that God is offering is not available in any school. It comes from his mouth. So that's why James 1 says, if anyone lacks wisdom, let him ask God. He's getting it from probably this verse, right? God gives wisdom. So if you lack in wisdom, go ask God for wisdom. And then seek. We're going to have to remember that word. So there is a condition for gaining wisdom. It's not just God's magical pixie dust. God, give me wisdom. And not that he doesn't drop good advice and ideas in our hearts and our minds. Of course he does that. But when it says the word seek, there's going to be an effort on my part to stay in the stream of seeking wisdom. So we're going to have to talk about what that looks like as we go, but let's just keep reading the pieces as we are. So chapter 3, 13 to 26, actually.
Blessed is the one who finds wisdom and the one who gets understanding. For the gain from her is better than gain from silver, and her profit better than gold. She is more precious than jewels, and nothing you desire can compare with her. Long life is in her right hand, and in her left hand are riches and honor. Her ways are ways of pleasantness, and all her paths are peace. She is a tree of life to those who lay hold of her. Those who hold her fast are called blessed. The Lord by wisdom founded the earth. By understanding he established the heavens. By his knowledge the deeps broke open, and the clouds dropped down the dew. My son, do not lose sight of these. Keep sound wisdom and discretion, and they will be life for your soul and adornment for your neck. Then you will walk on your way securely, and your foot will not stumble. If you lie down, you will not be afraid. When you lie down, your sleep will be sweet. Do not be afraid of sudden terror or of the ruin of the wicked when it comes. For the Lord will be your confidence and will keep your foot from being caught.
Okay. So let's look for the points in 13 to 26.
Wisdom is very valuable
Yeah, compared to what even?
compared to the treasures.
Everything,
Money.
riches,
Yeah.
treasures. What about the earth? 19.
Oh, that it was created. That's how the word earth was created.
So literally everything that we know, see, and touch came by wisdom. So wisdom is more valuable than even everything that was created. And God used wisdom. And think about this from this perspective. God's offering that which is more valuable than all of his creation.
Is there any relevance to it being referring to?
Well, it's a personification. It's a literary device. Because by the end, we'll see wisdom standing in the street as a woman calling out to people to come. Actually happened in chapter 1, but we skipped it. It's not really valuable that it's classified as a woman. It's just so that Solomon can use it to get her to talk. And instead of calling it a him, he calls it a her. And wisdom gets to speak and represent itself, which is what we'll see before the...
I don't know. I think it's more complex.
Okay, that's good.
What
It's
is
what?
thinking about like a woman,
Complex.
because a woman gives birth, and like Mary gave birth to Jesus, and like the ability to like give birth to something. I think that why didn't he call it a male? I think it's a little bit
Very well be.
yeah.
That's over my pay grade. I couldn't actually answer that one.
I have a theory on that.
What's your
Darren's theory on wisdom.
Darren's theory on wisdom is it's a female because it would be intimate for a man to be intimate with wisdom as he would a female.
Okay. To create a oneness with
Yes.
wisdom where it becomes a part of you. I actually have that as a point that we're not talking so much about knowledge and ideas as becoming a wise person. That is to say, our nature has been transformed to that of being a wise person, which is more than even just having wisdom as a bunch of stored advice and ideas. So there might be something there. I don't know that. I don't know that.
He doesn't like your idea. Will.
I just saying I don't know. That's all.
No,
I'm
he's
saying.
just saying that, yeah, he doesn't know why he's personified as
That is the exact
female,
answer.
I'm just teasing.
It's kind of interesting though,
It
because
is.
a lot of things are personified as male in the Bible. And this
But
is one
wisdom-
thing that's personified as female.
It is. It is. It's worth. You think about it.
Good point,
You
Sarah.
ponder on it.
I have maybe a theory.
There's a
It
theory.
says here, blessed is the one who finds wisdom, and the one who gets understanding, and then the next one. And in the home, it's the mother teaching the children, right?
Yeah, that's true.
For the gain from her is better than gain from silver, and her profit better than gold. Could be a bit of a stretch.
No, it could be. Yeah. Yeah. No, it could be. Yeah, I'm not prepared to answer that one. I don't know. I'll let us know yours. How do we get wisdom on that one? We have to ask for
Ask
it.
your mom. Ask your mom.
Ask your mom. Okay.
I'll get right on that and phone Charlotte as soon as I get
That's
out of
right.
here.
She'll tell you. She'll tell you.
Why do you do mother blaming?
Okay. Let's do 4, 1 to 9. I've only got a couple more. They're going to be pretty quick. Okay. 4, 1 to 9. Who wants to read 4, 1 to 9? Anybody?
I can do that.
Chris wants to do 4 to 9. And then we're going to actually skip 5, 6, and 7 because he basically says stay away from sexual immorality for 3 chapters. So I think he really, like, look at the titles.
Bad version of
Look at the titles in 5, 6, and 7. So definitely Solomon is going overboard to make sure that we are warned about sexual immorality. Okay, but then we get to 8 and 9, and it's going to wrap up. And here's how I want to do it. Who's going to do 8, 1 to 11? Okay, and who's going to do 8, 12 to 21?
I can do that one.
And who's going to do 22 to 31? Connor, you're a good reader. How about you do 8, 22 to 31? Okay, so we'll just stop there, and then Chris will head to chapter 4. Okay, so we're going to start at 4, 1 to 9.
Hear, O sons, a father's instruction, and be attentive, that you may gain insight. For I give you good precepts. Do not forsake my teaching. When I was a son with my father, tender, the only one in the sight of my mother, he taught me and said to me, let your heart hold fast to my words. Keep my commandments and live. Get wisdom, get insight. Do not forget and do not turn away from the words of my mouth. Do not forsake her, and she will keep you. Love her, and she will guard you. The beginning of wisdom is this: get wisdom. And whatever you get insight. Praise her highly, and she will exalt you. She will honor you if you embrace her. She will place on your head a graceful garland. She will bestow on you a beautiful crown.
What's the point of 4, 1 to 9?
And embrace it. I love what he says in 7.
The key to wisdom is this.
Game.
Yeah.
Just
Sounds like
get
a parent answer to something. Yeah.
I mean, if you want a Yoda comment,
Yeah.
it is wisdom to get wisdom.
it.
And that's the verse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your child
Simply just get it.
Get wisdom. 5, get wisdom, get insight. Yeah, and you'll notice that even though it's sounding repetitious, but we're reading new passages, that's the point of why I'm studying it this way with us. He's saying the same thing over and over again so that we don't miss his easy point, is Get wisdom. Get it.
But
Get
it's even, so the way that it's being described out in those last verses,
Okay.
7 to 9, it's just like, it's a beautiful thing.
Right.
It's beautiful.
It's a wonderful thing to get. She'll place on your head a graceful garland. She'll bestow on you a beautiful crown. Okay, we're going to go to 8 because there's a couple more pieces that 8 brings that I want us to see. 8, 1 to 11.
Does not wisdom call? Does not understanding raise her voice? On the heights beside the way, at the crossroads she takes her stand. Beside the gates in front of the town, at the entrance of the portals she cries aloud. To you, O man, I call, and my cry is to the children of man. O simple ones, learn prudence. O fools, learn sense. Hear, for I will do all things, and from my lips will come what is right. For my mouth will utter truth. Wickedness is an abomination to my lips. All the words of my mouth are righteous. There is nothing twisted or crooked in them. They are all straight to him who understandeth, and right to those who find knowledge. Take my instruction instead of silver, and knowledge better than choice gold. For wisdom is better than jewels, and all that you may desire cannot compare with her.
Point to that. Oh, that's good. The blessings of wisdom. That's good. Right. Which is more rich? Which is more rich? The person with all the money in the world or the person with all the wisdom God offers? Okay, 12 to 21.
I, wisdom, dwell with prudence, and I find knowledge from discretion. The fear of the Lord is hatred of evil. Pride and arrogance and the way of evil and perverted speech I hate. I have counsel and sound wisdom. I have insight. I have strength. By me kings reign and rulers decree what is just. By me princes rule and nobles rule all who govern justly. I love those who love me, and those who seek me diligently find me. Riches and honor are with me, enduring wealth and righteousness. My fruit is better than gold, even fine gold, and my yield than choice silver. I walk in the way of righteousness, in the paths of justice, granting an inheritance to those who love me, and filling their treasuries.
And the point?
Sounds like wisdom has a friend in prudence, knowledge and discretion.
There is that.
It's kind of interesting.
Well, let's go there. Explain a bit more.
As it's described here, he's saying, my fruit is better than gold, even fine gold, and my yield than choice silver. I'm walking the path of righteousness and the path of justice, granting inheritance to those who love me, and filling their treasuries. I see that as wisdom is the greatest treasure that so.
Yeah, it's its own reward, and then it actually has the reward of enrichifying, which is a claim that it says over and over again.
Yeah.
Who is wisdom's company? Liam made a good point. Prudence is wisdom's company. What else does it have? Sorry?
Discretion.
Discretion. What else? Knowledge. Keep going. There's actually quite a few in this passage.
Counsel.
Yeah, 14. Counsel.
Sound wisdom.
Sound
Insight.
wisdom. Insight. What else? Strength. That's interesting, eh? And then who else does wisdom keep company in verse 15?
Good
Kings, rulers, princes, nobles, all those who govern justly. And then here's a promise in 17. I love those who love me, and we're back to seeking. Those who seek me diligently find me. So we're back to seeking again. I'm going to make a point right now about this. When we think about what Jesus did with the 12 disciples, he had them follow him for those 3 years, and then they said, what are we going to get out of this? and he said, well, you're actually going to sit on 12 thrones ruling in the kingdom. Can we just hear Jesus' promise that the disciples will rule with the promise that the saints will rule, and then see this here, by me kings reign? Proverbs is God's gift to every disciple to get trained for reigning. Because it's by wisdom that there's rulership. And in God's kingdom, you betcha it's by his wisdom that, that there's his rulership. Proverbs is kingship preparation. There's a lot of teaching about how to be a king in Proverbs. About how to be a ruler. King and queen, interchangeable. There's a lot on it, on rulership.
Isn't it interesting, who is not a friend of wisdom is pride and arrogance?
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, we'll let 22 to 31 happen, and then we'll wrap up at 9 and close it up.
The Lord possessed me at the beginning of his work, first of his acts of will. Ages ago I was set up at first from the beginnings of the earth. When there were no depths, I was brought forth. When there was no springs, abounding was water. Before the mountains had been shaped, before the hills, I was brought forth. Before he had made the earth with its fields, or the first of the dust of the world. When he established the heavens, I was there. When he drew a circle in the face of the deep, when he made firm the skies above, when he established the fountains of the deep, when he assigned to the sea its limits so that the waters might not transgress his command, when he marked out the foundations of the earth, when I was beside him like a master workman, and I was daily in his delight, rejoicing before him always, rejoicing in his inhabited world and delighting in children of men.
Okay. Yeah, what's the point here?
Talks much of being there from the beginning. That's wisdom is there from the start.
Yep. Yep. It's one of the earliest things that God set out there.
Yeah, because it had to come first, because it said that that's what created.
Right. By wisdom God created, so wisdom was.
Created the earth. Is there from the start.
And can we hear it again? He's offering this same wisdom to his people who will seek for it. The ultimate treasure hunt is the wisdom that God is offering.
People don't get wise.
No. No.
It's not something you can take pride in or be arrogant
Because
about.
wisdom is not a friend of pride.
No.
Which means another key is humility. Humility is then one of the keys to gaining wisdom. Which is why,
very opposite to the world's, view of
right, being proud of our knowledge achievement.
smart.
It's humbling to ask for it. That's why you have to ask for it. Admitting that you don't have it. And then you're back.
And the promise in Proverbs is anybody who's simple can come gain wisdom for the asking. Anyone who's simple can gain wisdom for the asking. Wow. I'm not very smart, good. No problem. You can ask God for wisdom. He will give it generously. Without okay, here's 9. I'll just read 9, and this is kind of like the big finale. Wisdom has built her house. She has hewn her 7 pillars. She has slaughtered her beasts and mixed her wine. She has also set her table. She has sent out her young women to call from the highest places in the town. Whoever is simple, let him turn in here. To him who lacks sense, she says, come eat my bread and drink of the wine I have mixed. Leave your simple ways and live, and walk in the way of insight. Whoever corrects a scoffer gets himself abuse, and he who reproves a wicked man incurs injury. Do not reprove a scoffer, he'll hate you. Reprove a wise man, and he'll love you. Give instruction to a wise man, and he'll be wiser still. Teach a righteous man, and he will increase in learning. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is insight. For by me your days will be multiplied, and your years will be added to your life. If you are wise, you are wise for yourself. If you scoff, you alone will bear it. Okay, so wisdom makes one last call to the simple to come and eat from her bread. And then we have this promise, that this teaching that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is, and you kind of put it in brackets, is the beginning of insight. So the fear of the Lord begins wisdom, and knowledge of God begins insight. So there's our huge first starting point. If you don't know God, you don't know nothing. If you don't know God, you don't know anything. Because the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the fear and the knowledge of the Holy One begins insight. Okay, then let's just read about the way of folly. This will be our final piece here. So we've got the woman wisdom standing in the street, and now the woman folly is standing in the street too. The woman folly is loud, she is seductive and knows nothing. She sits at the door of her house, takes a seat in the highest places of the town, calling to those who pass by, who are going straight on their way. Whoever is simple, let him turn in here. To him who lacks sense, she says, stolen water is sweet, and bread eaten in secret is pleasant. But he does not know that the dead are there, that her guests are in the depths of the grave. So the comparison between wisdom and folly is two women standing maybe on opposite corners of the house, of the street. One woman says, if you're simple, come in here and eat, and I'll give you insight and life. Notice the opposition of life and death. And then the folly woman stands in the street and says, you're a moron, come on in. Only it's stolen water and it's bread that's eaten in secret. In other words, there's a fraudulent aspect to what she offers. And the truth is, you're joining the dead, because her guests are in the depths of the grave. So that's our quick survey. You guys get the sense that Solomon really, really, really wants us to get. So what's our response? I think it's pretty much just James 1:5. What's James 1:5? Ask. Ask for wisdom. But let's remember our seeking, right? So I'm just going to flip to 2, 4. If you seek for it like silver and search for it as for hidden treasure, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. Look at verse 3. If you call out for insight and raise your voice for understanding. Can we just do this? Can we just do this? We say, God, give me wisdom.
Yes.
God, give me wisdom.
Call out with a loud voice. God, give me wisdom. It's not meant to be a quiet pursuit. It's not meant to be a backseat achievement. This is the driving forward to say, God, I'm seeking this as if I was looking for a stash of gems. I would be looking with this diligence and with this boisterousness, and that's the image that he's giving. Because then we can understand the fear of the Lord. And if this is such the cycle, isn't it? If we find wisdom, then we'll understand the fear of the Lord, and the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And the beginning of wisdom is get wisdom. So it's almost like God just puts a little spark in our hearts and says, here's a little bit of wisdom, go get some more. And based on the wisdom that he gave you, you go find some more. And then when you find some more, you grow in the fear of the Lord. And when you grow in the fear of the Lord, it helps you understand wisdom. And now that you understand wisdom, you seek for it as for hidden treasure, and then when you find it, you understand the knowledge of the Holy One, which begins insight. And once you have insight, you know that you need more fear of the Lord and more humility, and it just becomes the pathway. And God started it with grace. I gave you your first piece of wisdom. Go get some wisdom. Ask for it. Cry out for it. Make it a priority. I'm not going to say that now we should all start reading books, because if somehow that's the answer. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't include that either, right? It doesn't mean that that doesn't happen. We've got all these books out there. We've got a whole library full of books. Maybe you walk home with a book today. I'm just saying maybe. Because God is the one who guides us on a path into wisdom.
Well, I think that's what they mean by being simple-minded.
Explain.
You know, like you don't want to come into it with a great intellect and think you know everything.
Yes. Yeah. 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 Oh, and it fits perfectly with what Jesus said. He cried out to the Father and said, Father, I'm glad that you've hid these things from the wise and the learned and revealed them to babes. It doesn't mean that he didn't want them to become smart and knowledgeable and learn. It's just there was this humble position that God can then bless. Absolutely.
I think it's interesting as well how he uses the analogy a lot of like hidden treasure and gold and silver and those things are always like, you know, the precious jewels are hidden under the ground, right? So you got to go and dig and search and look for them and you know.
Oh,
and
the
that's-
people that search for that stuff become obsessed with it, right?
Yeah.
They're just
He's actually, he's playing on that though, isn't he?
Yeah. So we and it's kind of like, you know, nowadays we have, you know, the touch of a button, we can have all the information, all the translations of the Bible, but we're so far away from the Bible today. You know, in Christianity we're making up all these doctrines that have nothing to do with the Bible. You know, but you know, it's like if we just go and seek the Lord and seek his wisdom and dig and study, you know, and ask him to reveal himself to us, and we'll get that wisdom and that understanding and insight of his nature and character. That's it.
If I seek wisdom, I'll know I found it when I find the Lord, right?
Yeah.
But does that mean that I shouldn't find wisdom in the natural world, the natural way of things? Is a wise person handling their finances still just as wise in terms of what wisdom is than the person who's studying God through theology? The Proverbs would say yes. The Proverbs is filled with practical, life-based teachings. But when I find the Lord, I get a clarity about money. When I find the Lord, I get a clarity about relationships, basic relationships. Proverbs is actually not very super spiritual. Proverbs is not. The advice that it gives.
Very practical.
Very practical. But that's not to say, though, that when I find God, it's not like he's impractical. I found God and I became useless. No. Solomon would argue the other way. You find God, you find wisdom, you become extremely functional.
Well, that was like the story of Daniel and Mikhail and prediction names.
Shadrach, Meshach,
Yeah, those are
and
easier
Abednego.
to remember. Their original names. Right? Like they sought the Lord and committed to be faithful to him and sought him, and God gave them more wisdom than all of the other king's advisors.
They could rule Babylon better than the wise people of Babylon because they had the fear of the Lord. Daniel. Yeah, same thing. Okay, so I'm not going to say are we sold, but we've just had our first pass at Solomon the salesman, and I don't know. The only response to me is say yes, God, right? So whatever kernel of convincing that he's done to our hearts, or whatever path he's pushed us on for wisdom, I think we just give him the time to say yes, God. Because when do we need wisdom? I think we started there.
Every moment that we're alive.
Which situations could you use some more wisdom? Okay? And to me, I'll just tell you this as I was getting ready. The first place that I need wisdom is actually about myself. Because I don't see myself the way I am. Anyone else see themselves the way they are? No. I see myself the way I would like to see myself.
Then you
So-
feel good about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm not putting that on anybody else. But we should acknowledge that that's wisdom. To be honest about ourselves and ask God for wisdom to see ourselves properly. To enter 2020 not assuming that we've got it all together, but enter 2020 saying, dear God, reveal that which is, like, give the wisdom to me to see, to have discernment, to have understanding about even my own self. And then from there to let God do his wisdom work in reordering even the me. As broadly and as practically or as spiritually as that ends up being, may it be so, God. Give me wisdom to know myself. Much less all the things that are outside of ourselves. Okay, well, I kind of feel like we crammed it a lot because we were just, we started late and all that, so it's not my fault. Anyway, we'll just spend a moment here with God and just ask him for wisdom. God, we're just going to give you a moment to ask for wisdom. God, I'll start there. I'll start there where we left off. God, you're the one that when you reveal truth, what is a true perspective, a true understanding, a true insight, that it has that breath of life to it. And I know, God, that as I think about not becoming super introspective and twisted in on myself, but to have an honesty that you bring about myself, to start there. I'm sure everybody else sees my foibles. They should just speak up. But Lord, I do. I will point that wisdom finger and say, God, give wisdom about myself. I don't want to start 2020 assuming, presuming upon myself. But rather, God, you offer wisdom and insight so that we can grow and change and become wise people actually. For myself, I just say, God, I ask for wisdom. Lead me on the path of seeking it. If you want to pray out loud, I think that's fine today.
A while back, I spoke on the fear of God. I was asking for a fresh revelation of a fear of you. Yeah, that you would put the fear of the Lord in our hearts and our minds. Not really something I can conjure up on my own. So I ask that you reveal yourself to us in a fresh way that would bring about the fear of you, that would be the beginning of wisdom for us.
Lord, there is no area in my life or in my life of work, everything from relationships to just being able to take care of other people and myself and the earth and my garden to my animals. Everything was made by you, and you know exactly how it works. And so I do ask for that wisdom that only you can give, and the humility to be able to receive it and have it perfect. So Lord, for 2020, please give us clear wisdom and some that desire to come and Lord, I know that, people of the world are attracted to those who have insight and wisdom and discretion and all those kinds of things. They know that there's something more, there's something to it. And so, it works in so many ways. And so, we love you, Jesus. Thank you for to share this with us. So wonderful.
So that a wise woman builds her house up, but a foolish woman with her own hands tears her house down. But we want to be a foolish woman. So Lord, we do ask for your wisdom in our homes, that you would fill our hearts with that, that you would fill our minds with clarity on how to react to situations, that you fill our mouth with praise-giving words, that you would build up our homes and not tear them. We would
Father, I praise you for you are the fountainhead of all wisdom and knowledge and insight. And Father, I just ask that you would bless each of us here with a hearing heart. Because essentially that's really what Solomon was asking from you, was that you would give him a heart that can hear and understand your ways, Lord. And Lord, that's what we long to grow deeper in, is an understanding of your nature and character. And that by your Spirit it would dwell in us and come through us, Lord. So I just ask, Lord, that you would do that for your body here, Lord.
I'm going to do one thing here before we wrap up. Just for the person beside you or near you, you don't have to touch them, but just point your heart toward them and just ask God to bless them with wisdom. Particularly seeking. And specifically wisdom for the things going on in their life. Let's just ask for a person nearby that they would have wisdom for the specific situations of their life. And then just cap it off, asking God that this person become a wise person. So God, we just honor you that you're the original wise person and that you've made things so simple because it's all in you. It's a one-stop shop for all things. I'm grateful that your scriptures are so clear and repetitive on it so that it's a simple message. So God, we receive the simple message and I ask for a grace to keep it echoing into our life throughout 2020 so that the prayer and the request of wisdom will just echo over and over again this year. But otherwise, thanks for meeting us this morning. Amen.
Matt, they just want to say, like,